Hey there, everybody. I hope you're having a good wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, what your day's got going on. Thanks for listening again. Um, listen, this is number seven or number six in a series of seven because of the introduction. I wasn't thinking about that, but the introduction wasn't. We just wanted to sort of talk about some things that we'd be talking about. I may have to redo the introduction because I have changed a little bit about what I was going to talk about. I think we sort of stuck to the point of what I was going to say, and I think I brought the topics out of what I was going to talk about in the introduction. So I think we've covered it pretty good. We've talked about faith, righteousness, and we've talked about grace. We've talked about the law. We've talked about several different things that we talked about in the introduction. I'm hoping I'm sticking to that because I think it's important that we do that. But anyway, let's get back to where we were in the scriptures, what we were talking about in Second Peter chapter 3 and 2 Peter chapter 3, and I think we got down to verse 16. And but I wanted to go back and do some things before we actually. I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to do this. Let's just do this, okay? All right. Yeah, the unlearned is what I really wanted to focus on here. That's where I wanted to get to. Let's read that verse one more time and then we'll get into it. As also in all the epistles, and we're talking about Paul, let's look at verse 15. And and account that the long suffering of our Lord is salvation, even as our beloved brother Paul, notice that's who he's talking about, also according to the wisdom given unto him, hath written unto you. Now it says, as also in all his epistles, speaking in them of those things in which are some things hard to be understood. We know that sometimes it's hard to understand Paul's writings, and some people have had a hard time. I used to have such a hard time. I'd be sitting there reading. He'd say, "Well, you need to establish the law," and he'd say, "No, we're not under the law," and it was like, oh Lord, man, what does this mean? I would sit there and just have a hard time with all that stuff. Well, God really opened my eyes to some of this stuff over the years and helped me to understand how the law works, how grace works, um, how the Spirit of God works. There's a lot of things I've learned. So, and just remember, let's just move on. Just here where it says in verse 16 says, in all the epistles, speaking in them of these things in which are some things hard to be understood. That's where we're at. Which they that are unlearned, now notice that word unlearned there. That's what I wanted to get to. And unstable, wrist or twist, as they do all the other scriptures. Now we said, what about the Old Testament scriptures? Well, here's the thing about the Old Testament scriptures. In the Old Testament, what would take place there was is that what I want to say is that if you people told people not to read the Old Testament, not to have any part with the Old Testament, okay? But here's the thing, I don't agree with that at all, and I think we need to learn from the Old Testament because when I first started reading the Bible, the thing that I used to do was I had this little guide that I followed that someone gave me. They gave me a concordance. Can't name it. I can't remember the exact name of what the concordance was, but analytical concordance. That's what it was. And in the back of it, it had reading the Bible through in the in 1 year. And so in the morning times, I would read the Old Testament. In the evening times, I'd read the New Testament. Well, what I would see was I would see from where I was reading the Old Testament that it was being quoted in the New Testament. And I'm thinking, okay, wow, this is really cool. Then referencing back and forth. And I remember listening to all those stories and realizing that God was a powerful God and that He was on our side from the Old Testament. Now, not from the New. I realized the power of God in the Old Testament, how much He stood up for us and how the miracles He worked for them and all that stuff. And it says that in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 that those things are somewhere around in there. I think it's in chapter 10. that those things were done for our examples and our examples. So we need to realize that. We need to hold on to that and not let that go. So we don't need to be telling people not to read the Old Testament because we're going to learn here in the next few things we're going to be talking about. Oh boy, got hiccups. We're going to learn here in the next few little bit that okay, why were they unlearned, and what was he talking about, and who is twisting the scriptures? And we want to get to the bottom of all this. Let's turn to Romans chapter 2, verses 17, 18, real quickly. And okay, verse 17 it says, "Behold, thou art called a Jew, and restest in the law, and makest thy boast of God." Whoops. "And knowest His will." Now, how do they know God's will? It's because they know the law. That's what that's what Paul just said. "And approvest the things that are more excellent, being instructed out of the law." So these are learned people. They're instructed out of the law. "And art confident that thou thyself art a guide to the blind." Now, if they're a guide to the blind, how are they a guide to the blind? They're a guide to the blind because they are instructed out of the law. Now watch what this says. "A light to them which are in darkness." Isn't that amazing? "An instructor of the foolish." Wow. "A teacher of babes, which has the form of knowledge and of the truth of the law." Now, let's think about that just for a minute. If you've been instructed in the law, you're going to know God's will. You're going to approve the things that are excellent, being instructed out of the law. You're going to be a guide to the blind. You're going to be a light to those that are in darkness. You're going to be an instructor to the foolish. And you're going to be a teacher to babes. And you're going to have knowledge and truth of the law. Okay, so now when we're looking at back at number, Second Peter chapter 3. Let's look back there just a minute. We're getting a little tired. Second Peter chapter 3, and we're going to go down there to verse 16, and we're going to read a little bit there. We're going to actually go on. Actually, before we do, we're going to read that verse again. As also in all his epistles, speaking in them of those things which are some things hard to be understood, which they that are unlearned, notice what they're unlearned. They're unlearned in the law. That's what we're going to here. They're unlearned and unstable. They twist as they do all the other scriptures after they've read Paul's letters unto their own destruction. Wow. So they've not been instructed. They don't understand these things. So, "And you therefore, beloved, seeing you know these things before, you've been told you know them before, beware lest you also be led away with the error of the wicked." Now, we're going to figure this out here because we're going to look at this word, uh, the wicked, being led astray by the wicked. Now, let me go back a minute. I'm trying to keep my train of thought. I'm really tired. I didn't want to stop. I should have maybe, but I want to finish this one at least. It says, also, it says, as also in all his epistles, speak in them things which are hard, well, blah, 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 blah. You therefore, beloved, seeing ye know these things before, it's verse 17, beware lest ye also be led away with the error of the wicked. Now, how are they going to be led away by the error of the wicked? And what is the wicked? How are they going to be led away by the error of the wicked? What is the error of the wicked? Well, that's where really the only way we can figure that out is look that word up. Let's look that word up. And that word is found in Thayer's. I looked it up in Thayer's 113, and it says, I hope I say this correctly, it's athemos, and it says, one who breaks through the restraint. Now, this is really important. One who breaks through the restraint of the law and gratifies his lust. Isn't that amazing? The wicked one is the one who breaks through the law. In other words, he was saying the ones that's having error problems are the ones that's taking Paul's letters and twisting them to their own destruction. So what they were twisting and saying was really they're wicked. They're not following the law. They're not, in other words, they're breaking the law. They're lawless. They're doing things they're not supposed to do, and they're justifying them through the letter of the law. The letter of the law, which that's what they're doing now. They're doing the same thing in the churches. They're resisting the instruction of the law, and knowing that it's actually you're able to lead the blind, guide the blind, and shed light in the darkness through the law. You know what God said that His people out of Israel would do would be He had planned for them to be a light to the rest of the world. Now He had a hard time with them because they kept wanting to break His laws. They kept wanting to go against what He told them to do, and they finally ended up in a lot of trouble a lot of times. And you see, here's the thing: if we don't follow the ways of God, it may take a while for it to catch up with you, but it's going to catch up with you. It's going to be destructive to you, and it's going to bring death. And if you sear your conscience, you're in danger of apostasy, and you're in danger of being lost. And I don't think you want to do that. I know I don't want you to do it. I don't want to do it. And we shouldn't even try to test the reins of that and try to find out how to get there. We need to be more careful about what we believe. Okay? It's been good talking to you again. I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. I think that's a good place to end it. We've seen some things. We've got some things to meditate on. And I'll see you next time. God bless you. And remember, the Word of God is sharp and powerful, and quick and powerful, and sharper than any two-edged sword, dividing of the soul, the spirit, and the intents of the heart. So the Word's got enough power in it, with the Spirit working with it, to bring you to the truth, to bring you through to life. So listen to the Word, and you do not need a self-help gospel. And I apologize for the hiccup thing, but I didn't want to stop and try to start over again. You guys be blessed. Have a good one.